Hi, good day to you. This is Ishwar. I'm a co-founder of PurplePond group of companies. This whole idea of taking this video came from my friend Prabhu and my other colleague Soumya, and they somehow seem to like one of the presentations I make to an industry body, which basically is an effort to capture all the positive news that happens around us. Because by nature, I think all the newspapers and the TV channels have got into this habit of wanting to capture only the negative news because that's what attracts public. So the whole endeavor is to see whether we can be an oasis of a positive thinking, or at least we will be able to present to you some of the positive news that happens around us. And maybe there's some hope for all of us once you listen to this. So I'll take you through this as 4 sections. The first section will be policies or politics, policies, and then events and trends. So we will cover a little bit of international policies which can or politics which can have an impact on India, and then some of the policy initiatives by the government of India, and we will also be capturing some of the events of significance that has an impact on India, and the trends that happen across the globe and in our country. It may look like an India-centric initiative, but it's something is always better to start with. So the first section I will be taking you through is the politics. And in the politics section, one of the biggest developments that we have been able to see in the recent times is that the US has taken the battle against China a little bit further by putting in the digital curbs, right? So they are asking TikTok to sell its stake, and Microsoft is already in the race, and a few other companies including Walmart today has come into the picture, and they want to go and bid for their stake. So this actually upping the ante, and in fact what is very interesting is President Trump has quoted the Indian action of banning TikTok, that being the precursor for his decision. So in the entire context, I think India is once again gaining ground even on the international politics. And the second thing is they're also trying to push for a ban on WeChat. Now WeChat, we know that US has a substantial Chinese American population, and a lot of people use that app both for trade and for communicating with their near and dear ones. So the government of US is really upping the ante and pushing for a digital, I wouldn't call it as a snub, but at least a digital disconnect with China, and hoping to settle some of the trade issues. The second thing, which is of very high significance from an Indian perspective, is the US decision to sell 66 F-16 planes to Taiwan. Now, why is this of significance? Because Taiwan has always been considered by China as part of their territory, and China has been a little bit more aggressive on the South China Seas, and even with India on the Galwan clash. So they have been kind of been a bully with the neighbors, trying to expand their horizon of influence and area. And in that context, I think the sale of these 66 F-16s to Taiwan will have a significant impact on the geopolitics of the region. The third is a very positive development for all of us, is that UAE and Israel restored their diplomatic relationship. We always know that the Arab nations always had a relationship of mistrust with Israel, and though they are appreciative of the technologies that Israel as a country has been able to bring, there has always been this mistrust. But having said that, Egypt and Jordan had earlier restored ties with Israel, but that was very long back. So the telephone lines between UAE and Israel have been restored, and because of this, something else has happened in the Middle East. Turkey has cut its link with UAE. Now, what we notice in this whole thing is we are seeing that the world is realigning itself and beginning to become a little bit more tolerant from a strategic perspective, and not just getting narrowly divided between a Jewish state and an Islamic state. And this is going to have a very positive follow for India, because we have a substantial amount of collaboration with Israel. We also have a substantial amount of Indians working in UAE. And I'm sure this friendship is going to benefit India a lot, because we can use the technology of Israel, and UAE itself is a large market for us to go and implement some of those projects that Israel can be a source of technology. The third thing is there's a lot of realignment happening in OIC. Now, what is OIC? It's Organization of Islamic Countries, and the primary leaders of this OIC has always been Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. But of late you have been seeing that there has been a new axis that has got developed between Turkey, Pakistan and Malaysia, and this has started off from Pakistan feeling that not enough support has come to it from the OIC for its Kashmir issue. People don't realize that India also has a substantial population of Islamic country, is Muslims, but it is not a part of OIC yet. And because of this effort, there is been a split which has happened within OIC, and Turkey, Pakistan and Malaysia had joined, formed a front and wanted to have an alternate meeting sometime back. That was snubbed, and the Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia had asked Pakistan not to do that, and it had the whole thing had lied low for some time. And once again we see that suddenly the Pakistan Prime Minister had come out with a statement saying that Saudi Arabia and the Organization of Islamic Countries are not doing enough. And then that's not been taken very kindly by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So they went ahead and recalled the loan, an emergency loan that they had given to Pakistan, and that's not helping Pakistan, because Pakistan already is having some challenges on their domestic front with respect to the economy, and they have already been borrowing heavily from China. And when Saudi Arabia asked for a prepayment of their loan, I think to the extent of $1 billion, and then they had to once again go to China to ensure that this loan has been repaid. Now what is happening is we see a lot of traction and positive support for the initiatives that India has been able to take. Suddenly our stature, at least on the international level, seems to move up a notch better, and I think that's going to tide good for the Indian thing. We have had certain challenges with certain neighbors, but mostly I think it has been our diplomacy on the Middle East has really stood ground during these challenging times. The next I will come to some of the policies that we have in India which can have a long-term strategic impact on our country and countrymen. One interesting development that I had noticed is that Haryana had come up with a crop diversification plan. Now nearly 2,47,105 acres the farmers had voluntarily come forward to switch to alternate crops from rice and wheat. Now why is this significant? We already know that the Yamuna-Satluj link canal has been a bone of contention between Punjab and Haryana, and Punjab and Haryana has been predominantly wheat and rice growing agricultural base, and both these crops are highly water intensive, and water has become a scarce resource, and there has been some fights. Now moving away from crops which consume high water into alternate crops. What are the alternate crops they have moved into? They have moved to corn and pulses. This means a lesser water is going to be used, and the fact that farmers have come forward and volunteered to do this, I think speaks volume about how or in which direction our country is moving. That's a very positive development. The second very interesting development and a good development that has happened is Tamil Nadu has announced for a liberalized scheme for solar pumps. Now what it had done was, anyone who was availing the central government grant or benefits for putting solar pumps, they were asked to cut the free supply that was given by the Tamil Nadu government to them, and therefore the adoption of solar pumps was not actually picking up in Tamil Nadu. Now why people wanted to put solar pumps is, even though the power for agricultural pumps was being given free, the power was predominantly supplied in the night. So the farmer not only had to lose sleep in the night, he also had to face challenges with all the snakes and other creatures while he is working in the night. And to overcome that, a lot of people were keen and interested to put solar pumps, but this had been a kind of a challenge for them to undertake. So Tamil Nadu has come and waived this thing, which means farmers can now put solar pumps and claim 70% subsidy from the central government schemes. So this is a very positive development, which means slowly and steadily the reliance of a farmer on a free power will come down, and that's going to help the state electricity boards. And another very interesting development that has happened, which is a very sensible development that has happened, is for the Tamil Nadu government, the electricity board, to allow the rice mills up to 150 kVA to operate under low tension LT connection. You call it as HT connection or low LT connection, which is high tension or low tension. Now why is this significant? Because whenever there's a bill, when you use a high tension connection, there is a bill for the amount of power that you consume, and there is also a commitment charge that all these people were paying. So there were a lot of rice mills, I think close to 3,000 rice mills, which were using high tension power, though they only were operation for a particular season. So rice is a seasonal crop, and then there were times when the rice was not harvested, and these mills used to be idle, and they used to pay these commitment charges even during this idling time. Now the fact that they have moved to low LT connection, which means they don't need to pay the commitment charge, and they just need to pay for the consumption charge. So this is going to bring down the cost for the rice mills, and it's definitely going to impact positively for consumer, at least the big rice consumers, the southern states like you and me. And the other very interesting development is Delhi government has come up with an EV policy, which is electric vehicle policy, and they are going to reduce or waive off registration fee and road tax. So it is anticipated that anyway benefit of up to 30,000 rupees will be available for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, e-rickshaw and freight vehicles or quadricycles, and a benefit of up to 1,50,000 will be available for motor cars. It's early days, yes, and as usual there are some criticism, but I think it's a very positive step, because Delhi is one of the most polluted cities, and this is going to bring down the pollution. And if the auto rickshaws and public transport start beginning to adopt this, it's going to bring down the pollution, and we are going to have a very sustainable renewable energy in the form of solar power, which can feed the daytime charge, and our reliance on thermal power and fossil fuels can come down considerably, because fossil fuel in India is still a major import item. So your foreign exchange saving is there on a recurring basis, though the capital cost of solar panels will be there, but there will be a foreign exchange saving on a recurring basis, and also the pollution will come down. And then we had the RBI policy, which was one of the big blockbuster policies which came up at the beginning of the month, in the beginning of August. And here is a very important news. The RBI for the first time has after a series of interest rate reductions, where the repo rate has been brought down close to 2% in the last 1 year, for the first time they had very clearly indicated that they are not going to bring it down any further. The rates have remained unchanged, and RBI has also been a little bit concerned about the inflation, which I personally feel, I think we have come to almost the bottom of the interest rate decline. So people who are looking to take up a housing loan or any one of these loans, I think it makes sense for you to not wait any further and maybe start pursuing taking a loan, housing loan or a vehicle loan right now for you to this thing. We are almost at the bottom of the rate corrections. You may have one or two more corrections, but we are close to the bottom. And RBI has also announced that they will allow restructuring of MSME, micro, small and medium enterprises loans, and provided that you had not defaulted as of 1st March 2020, there is a restructuring possible by you. And very importantly, see, one of the second biggest items that we import as a country is gold, and we have a substantial amount of saving in gold in our country, and gold loans have always come handy to any middle class and low income group. And what do? We always go to a high interest and person. Sometimes they charge very high interest rates, and loan borrowings used to take place by pledging your jewelry. And there is something called as loan to value, which is called as LTV. That has been allowed to be now increased from 75% to 90% till March 31st March 2021. Now, already the gold prices have gone up, and then allowing the LTV up to 90%, it means that people who are going to take a loan will not only be able to get it at a lower rate from the banks, but they will also be able to benefit from a higher disbursement amount. So at least to a large extent, we'll be able to see that people don't fall into the debt trap of going and borrowing from private lenders at a very high rate. So that's a very positive move, and it's going to have a negative impact on companies which are basically into loans against gold, but it's going to have some positive loan disbursement for the banks. For the customers, people who are using a loan as for loan purposes, the cost of borrowings is going to come down. They are also broadening the priority sector lending norms, where they have included startups into this thing, and they have increased the limits in priority sector lending for renewable energy and small and marginal farmers. Now, these are all policy things which will slowly start having an impact. I personally feel that increasing the scope for the startups is a very positive move, and at least it will set a slightly better a platform for startups to go out and borrow, because priority sector lending comes at a much more affordable rate. And then land records have been digitized, and what we learn is that nearly 22 states and union territories, the land records have been digitized. So which means the registration is digital, the cadastral maps and the land records are digital, which means it is easy for you to sit in a place and monitor whether your land is safe or whether any lien has been marked against your land. It can considerably reduce the frauds that originate. We still know the Indian judiciary is overloaded with cases predominantly relating to civil cases relating to land deals, and so to a large extent we will be able to reduce the frauds and misuse of these things. And now I think this has been completed to nearly 90% of the states, and if this completely rolls out, it's really going to increase people's confidence in buying the land, because real estate sector is definitely, it not only is an important asset, it is also a sector which employs large unskilled and marginal labor.